Welcome, movie fans. Thanks for joining us for episode 109 of Reading Between the Reels, the premier podcast of superheroes having an existential crisis. If you're a new listener, we're so glad you found us. If you've been enjoying the show, please like, follow, or subscribe, and review us on iTunes or Spotify. You can also support the show by posting on your socials and joining our Facebook group. I'm Craig Dickinson alongside Corey Heitschmidt. Justin's out tonight, but should be back soon. How's it going, Corey?
You know what, Craig? You can get my hello when you fix this damn door. Wait, sorry, that might be the wrong movie, but I felt like it fit today.
Yeah, I hear you.
Oh, man. Craig, I'm doing fantastic. How about you?
Yeah, no, I'm good. It's as we record, we're off for Christmas break for 2.5 weeks, which is pretty amazing. And this episode's going to drop on Christmas Day. So if you're listening on Christmas Day, Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
There you go.
And a Happy New Year.
There you go. So, Corey, what have you been watching this week?
Still working through my Star Trek and Matlock with my wife. And you know what? I've seen a couple clips of some shows on TikTok recently, and these clips make me want to watch this show. So I may have to pick it up. I can't remember what it's called. Like, is it this? It's the guy from Third Rock from the Sun. The Third Rock, you know, the big tall guy, Third Rock from the Sun.
Are you talking about Lithgow?
Yeah, no, not Lithgow, the other guy.
French Stewart? Joseph Gordon-Levitt?
No, no. Maybe he's not in Third Rock from the Sun. Dang it, Craig. You're going to have to edit this out. Sorry.
Riveting podcasting. No, it's staying in.
Yeah, anyway, it's clips. I've seen some clips on TikTok, and I'm like, I got to find this show, and I gotta maybe watch it because it's pretty funny. The wife looks pretty funny in that show. So there you go.
Okay.
What about you?
Okay.
What are you watching?
Well, I have been watching some classic movies in the last couple weeks. And, I was thinking about this earlier today. Really, one of the biggest things I want to do with this show is just have people appreciate movies. I mean, that's kind of what we, like, even if it's a movie you don't really like, are there things that you can find that you do like with it? And I'm trying to be a better movie fan. So, I mentioned a couple weeks ago that I finally watched Citizen Kane. This time I watched The Maltese Falcon. And yesterday I just finished Vertigo.
Oh.
So
Vertigo, and let's talk about Vertigo.
Yeah,
I
did, but I need to see it immediately. Like, I read so many essays about that after. I mean, the movie is 66 years old at this point.
Okay,
58, I think. 1958 is when it came out. I did like it a lot. I mean, I've seen It's a Wonderful Life 100 times, and so anytime you get to see Jimmy Stewart playing something different than that, that's kind of a trip. And it's a very different performance from that. And I do like Alfred Hitchcock from what I've seen. It's a fascinating movie. It's like a fever dream.
Yes. And at the end, a little bit of intensity, right? I mean, it just is kind of.
I couldn't believe it ended like that. Like no spoilers if you haven't seen a 66-year-old movie, but I had not. Like I didn't even read the description, and so like halfway through, when you find out that about the other person that is the person, that's as vague as I'm going to get. I was like, oh wow!
Wait, this has been out for 60 years. We can't give plot spoilers right now.
Was Judy is Madeline? Is that how it works? Yeah.
The special effects in there were pretty trippy, weren't they? For like the Vertigo part.
Yeah. Well, see, that's
that
the
gives
one,
you vertigo.
That's the one thing that I saw that I was like, oh yeah, this. We've talked a lot about this. That some of these classic movies are classics for a reason, and they also inspire so many other things. This is the first instance of the dolly zoom when he looks down, and where the camera pulls back and then it zooms in at the same time. It's that same effect you see in Jaws when Roy Scheider's Brody is sitting on the beach and then he sees the shark attack, and like in Lord of the Rings when Frodo's looking down at the forest and it gets all kind of that's like that circle that's happening with a weird focus, that dolly zoom. So this is the first time that was used.
Yeah. And I got to tell you, I have a brother who's deathly afraid of heights, like horribly. And him and I have talked about it multiple times. And he said it's kind of like the movie Vertigo. That's what he feels when he gets in high places, that he feels a tunnel zoom that happens to him.
Yeah.
And so ever since, that's why this movie has always stood out to me, because I was kids. We were kids. We watched it. And And he's told me, this was multiple years ago here, that he told me that that's what it was like. It just feels like it kind of shrinks into a tunnel. So I've always thought about that.
Yeah, it's a good flick. Like I said, I need to see it again right away. Maltese Falcon is also great. That's a little bit older. That's from 41. That's Humphrey Bogart. This is like the first of the hard-boiled private detective, and when then the femme fatale walks in and asks for his help, and you're not supposed to trust her and all. It's the first of those.
Yeah.
So it's clearly been aped, and things have been homaged to that several times over. And that's another one that has lots of twists and stuff, and like I need to see it again because not a lot happens. It's mostly dialogue.
Yeah.
Performances are great. Peter Lorre's in it. Sidney Greenstreet's his first Sidney Greenstreet movie. And of course, Bogey is fantastic in it. So
you seeing a lot of difference in acting for the way people act back then versus like an Avengers movie acting, or even some of that's not a superhero movie, but just the level of acting and lines and delivery and
yeah. The biggest thing, and I'd heard about this, but I didn't have a lot of experience with it, is that the Star Wars, especially like the original one, the dialogue is so quippy and the line delivery is so fast. And that is meant to ape stuff from like the 40s and the serials and those kind of things. And that's the one thing you'll notice right away is people talk really fast. So,
yeah.
So that was kind of fun. Like, yeah,
So
that's
do
a
I.
style that we don't see anymore.
Yeah. Except on this podcast when I'm talking. I talk too fast.
So Corey, what are we talking about tonight? Which movie are we actually?
We are talking about Spider-Man 2.0 or 2.1. 2.1.
Did you watch the 2.1?
Craig, now let me explain this to you. You can't find 2.1 anywhere except the DVD.
Well, that's not entirely true, but
Is it? Did I mess that up?
no.
So what I did.
You did not mess it up, Corey.
Okay, so I watched Spider-Man 2.
Yeah.
And then there is a great YouTube video of a 35-minute video I watched that explains the theater cut and the extended cut.
I watched that too.
Frame by frame together. And that guy does such a great job of not only showing them and showing where the blank out, like this is the theater cut, and then the screen goes black, so you know that's where it stopped, and you get the extra scene. That was fantastic because here's why. Watching it, most of these 8 minutes, you don't really pick up what was different, what was the change. Like
they're extended scenes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just extending the scenes, and it's small things on a few parts. But there was a couple things that were real stand out to me, and I thought, oh my gosh, that would have been epic. And we'll point them out and talk about them. But it was a very different take on it.
Yeah. So the other way to get it is so Movies Anywhere, which we should get compensated for that, but it's fine. Movies Anywhere, which is it's a service that you buy your digital movies, and they're everywhere. They're on Apple, they're on Fandango now, or Fandango at Home. They're on Prime. They're everywhere. And but if you watch it through Movies Anywhere, it's one of the special features. So I had it, and I didn't know that I had it because I had bought the Blu-rays that had the digital copies of the theatrical releases and just went looking, and there it was. So if you have Spider-Man 2 digitally, then you already have Spider-Man 2.1 as well. So it's about, like Corey said, it's about 8 minutes longer. There really wasn't anything that I thought needed to be in there. This, like, the Doc Ock fight on the train is a little bit longer, and that's kind of fun. But like, there's a longer scene that's not in the film with Mary Jane talking to her friend about whether or not she actually loves the guy she's going to marry versus Peter and whatever. And I'm like, I don't like that character at all, so I really don't need that scene.
Yeah.
The elevator scene with Hal Sparks is longer, but like, it kind of
it's not better
because it's longer. It's not. No, longer is not better.
No, it is not better.
So.
The fight on the subway train had a couple parts on it that I feel like should have been in the movie.
Yeah. Well, some of it, they said they didn't have time or the budget at the time or whatever.
Oh, forget it. Time, come, forget it. We are used to 3-hour movies now.
So, yeah. No, it's, the theatrical cut's 127 minutes, which is a little bit long, a little over 2, and then, 8 minutes longer. And like I said, I don't think it's better. It's a lot of those scenes.
After 2 hours, we're not counting.
Yeah, the birthday party thing goes a little longer. So, anyway, but overall thoughts on Spider-Man 2 at large, Corey?
I love this movie.
Yeah,
I think this is better than the first one. This is the finest of the 3 Tobey Maguire Spider-Men. And I think, looking back at this is one of those movies. This is one of those rare movies that puts me right back into 2004 and what it was when I watched it. Because here's why. This was before cell phones were big. I don't even think I had a cell phone in 2004. But I did do is I remember in the 2000s, whenever a movie was coming out and I was real excited about it, I would buy the novelization of the film. They would always sell them at Walmart. And, it was just it was like one of those, and it's usually these same 5-6 writers, these same 5-6 authors who wrote the screenplay into a book. And Spider-Man 2 was one of the ones. I remember reading this book, the novelization of the film, so that when I went to watch the movie, I knew what was going to happen. And it makes it so much better because I knew what he was thinking. And I knew all these little conversations he was having in the book, what he was doing in the movie. I did the same thing for Transformers, same thing for a couple others. So, and so I think that's why I probably fell in love with this movie when I was younger. Just because I was excited about reading that book at that time and going in and watching it. And Spider-Man's the favorite superhero character of all of them. He's just the Peter Parker guy that everybody loves. And Tobey Maguire, I think, is an incredible Peter Parker. He is so quirky. Oh, I know. I heard that. He's so quirky and he's so nerdy and he's so awkward, which is kind of a great Peter Parker type thing. Andrew Garfield was always too cool. Tom Holland's just a little bit too cutesy, yuppie kind of guy. But Tobey Maguire always did this so well. So, but I think this one's great. The CGI and the practical effects that go with this in 2004 make this movie hold up incredibly well, even today's standards, I think, especially for some of Marvel's recent CGI stuff. And so I love this movie. I think it's great. There's some things that we're going to end up talking about. I think the fight scenes are incredible in this movie. Right? I mean, the fight scenes stand out. And I'm even gonna go this far. I'll wrap it up with this one thing here. That subway train fight is the best Spider-Man fight of all on-screen Spider-Man. Where he's standing sideways, catches himself popping out the window with his webs. That to me is comparable to Ben Affleck's warehouse fight in Batman versus Superman, because I love to drop that anytime I can. Those two are such standalone, character domineering fights that make this the best on-screen performance fight of any of the character movies that have ever come out.
Okay. I feel like this is... I said this earlier about X2, but I think I'm going to renege on that a little bit and say that this is the Winter Soldier of the pre-MCU. This is the best one we've seen so far.
Yes.
And probably the best pre-Iron Man Marvel movie of all of them. Better than the first movie, I think, in virtually every way. Maybe not the villain. I really love Willem Dafoe's performance, but Alfred Molina is no slouch in this. He's really, really good as well. The effects are better. The colors are brighter. Yeah, I always also think of the subway or the train sequence. Like, that's the thing I think of when I think of this movie.
Yeah.
And I will say that they do a really good job of hiding the CGI. If you watch it carefully, it still looks a little rubbery, kind of like the Matrix sequels, like with the bully fight, with like Thousand Smiths or whatever. It looks a little bit like that, or some early Harry Potter Quidditch stuff. But
only on Alfred Molina a couple times.
Yeah, on Spider-Man, no. But yeah, Molina's his face and stuff looks a little bit rubbery, but they hide it pretty well because the camera's moving so dynamically. So I don't. It's not distracting, or it's really looking for it this time. But for a 2004 film, it really holds up.
Yeah. The other thing I love about this movie that's great is I think this is where you see this existential crisis that Peter talks about. Tobey Maguire talks about in the No Way Home movie, where he says, I had this existential crisis, right? And he lost his webbing. Because in this movie, this is a heartbreaking movie of his story. Nothing is going right. He's been this hero role for a while now, and he is poor. Nothing is working. Aunt May is getting evicted. Kirsten Dunst is marrying another. MJ's going to marry some Jonah Jameson's son. Like, all these things are working against him. And he's like, am I not supposed to have happiness? Here I'm doing all this. And it's kind of one of those points where I look and I say, technically, in a superhero role, this would be where someone who had superpowers has to make a road crossing to say, am I going to become a villain or am I going to be a hero? Because the heroes are not getting rewarded. And you know, he can't even make ends meet. He can't even make his own happiness happen in this movie. And so then it affects his power. So it's really powerful in a sense of just kind of showing, especially a couple points where I looked and I said, because in my childhood, we grew up, my mom worked her tail off with 4 boys, single mom. We did not have much at all, you know, a couple times. And I look at that and I think, sometimes you really do feel like the world is against you when things are stretched so thin. And it makes me emotionally connect to this movie in a way that I think sometimes people can do with some movies, is where you look at the character and you just go, I know how that person feels a little, and makes it more powerful.
Nice. Well, I'm gonna transition into cinematography a little bit, because that directly takes me to the shot of the suit sticking out of the trash, which is lifted directly from the Spider-Man No More 1967 comic book arc, because that's what this movie really is about. And you know, him making those choices to, like, is he going to be Spider-Man? Is it worth being Spider-Man? And I think, you know, I didn't really like the organic web shooters, but I think in this film it works really, really well, because that's the first time that maybe not. I maybe quibble that might not be the first time that we get a hint that his powers are going away. But I think it's really powerful in this, that, you know, there's this psychosomatic element to it, that instead of him just running out of web fluid, that in this case, that's the power. And that fits so much better with this arc for him. Yeah,
I remember when I like the organic web shooter part, because I feel like it's more believable. It's more... He's got all these powers as a spider. Like, you know, this organic web shooter thing is a great power to have too, to make it and not have to worry and deal with all this web fluid stuff and how is he going to make it. And he's got to run out. And you see that come up. They play that a little bit in Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, where he runs out of web shooters or they get broken. And so I love this aspect of it. And, you know, and they play that up in No Way Home with it being kind of gross. Like, that was an incredible conversation. That was an incredible take on it. And it actually made me laugh when he's lowering Kirsten Dunst at the end. He's lowering MJ down, and you see his arm and the web shooter coming out of his arm.
Yeah.
And I just thought, would she maybe have a question like, is this stuff coming out of you? Like, wait a second. Yeah. What are you lowering me down with? So
that's let's not talk about that. What other shots or camera work stuff that from this film did you notice, Corey?
Okay, Craig, I actually wrote a few things, so we may have to ping pong back and forth here a little bit.
Yeah,
but,
go for it.
I did notice there's several shots of Octavius over his shoulder, where it's always like when he gets out of the bank, it's right over his shoulder, and you get a backwards glance from him several times in this movie. A lot of backwards glance where he's in the foreground and we're behind him watching what's happening. The cops come up to him and he's in front of us. There's a part where Spider-Man's shooting towards him, and not MJ, but Aunt May is going to hit him with the umbrella, but he's right in front of us again. There's a part on the subway where he's in front again, right in front of us on our view, and Spider-Man's coming over. So there's just a lot of that parts where I feel like it's just saying that he's in the way, he's in front of us, you know, and he's pushing this forward, like this story. So I thought it was kind of cool. It just made me pay attention to that a little bit and looked out for it. So what about you?
Yeah, that's a good catch. Now, I mean, I have to start with what I think are just brilliant opening credits. I mean, it's Alex Ross paintings, which are always gorgeous to look at, and it catches you up from the first film. Like, you don't even have to have seen the first film. And I love that it bridges it together. It's 3 minutes, but it feels like absolute time well spent, because it's just gorgeous paintings all the way through.
Yes.
But there's so many great just really interesting shots in this film. I mean, I was thinking, it just kind of chronologically, Otto's wife screaming in the reflection of the broken glass that's about to kill her.
Yep.
As it's rotating through. And then you have right into this extreme close-up of her eye about to be hit with the glass. I mentioned the suit in the trash. That's iconic. Some other things right off the bat is the spider cam, the camera system. It's a cable suspended camera system that they use only for the last shot of the first film. Is used a lot more in this one, which is probably another reason why this film I think is better, just because you get a lot more of Spider-Man swinging through the city and that real dynamic, because the camera is literally moving through the buildings there.
Yeah. I love the swinging parts. I think that's part of what makes Spider-Man. You got to have some swinging through the buildings, and they really hit that up right at the end too.
Yeah.
Another thing that I noticed was two things. When Octavius is running up the building with Aunt May as a hostage, there is a scene with some girl where he's coming up the building. It's like an office building. They're all in there. One arm comes through right next to her. She looks at the other side. The other arm comes through, like the other Otto's arm. And then, so these two things pop through. So she turns around and we get a wide shot of the whole room. She comes running dead center straight up at the camera and screams as loud as she can, like in a horror movie, right up in front of the camera. And it felt very like Evil Dead type movie that Sam Raimi did, like kind of a horror flick, a little bit like there, where, I don't know, it caught me by surprise, and I thought, my gosh, that's there was very much something to it that maybe I'm not catching, but I was like, that's worth noting that's some kind of camera work or something we're trying to throw back to as far as Raimi or his style.
Yeah, and speaking of that, and this just occurred to me too, is in a lot of ways how Batman Returns is kind of like Tim Burton Unleashed, like he just got to do whatever he wanted, for better or for worse. I think this movie is a lot of kind of just Sam Raimi just kind of getting to play in the toy box a lot more. I think the first movie gave him the ability to play around. So especially in the tentacle removal scene, like that is straight out of Evil Dead. Like there's even with the first person coming at the people. All their reactions, the quick cuts. I mean, they even cut to a chainsaw, and there's a snap zoom to the chainsaw. I mean, I was waiting for Ash to pop up and say groovy. I mean, it's
groovy.
It is blatantly Evil Dead all over the place in there, and I love it.
Yeah.
But lots of great angles in this thing. Like the fact that I love this because Spider-Man, with all of his abilities, he should fight vertically. That makes sense. So most of the fights with Doc Ock are, like even starting in the bank, like he's way up on the ceiling and Doc Ock's on the ground, and they keep rotating between the high and low angles, and it makes the scene much more dynamic. It makes sense. Spider-Man would not fight horizontally on the ground.
No, and that's the thing that makes this so good, is that they really went further in on that this time. Yeah. With Spider-Man standing on a building or standing on a subway sideways and doing some of those sideways tricks like that. I mean, that was a lot more in this movie. You saw it in the first movie when he's fighting the Green Goblin at the World Fair, right? He's on that. And you could tell, in our mind, we could tell that practical effect. They had him actually on the ground, but it was built on a stage that looked like it was the side of a building. And he was just at ease standing there. And so they do that here where they have him standing sideways and stuff and do a really good job of that. So I love that because it makes me like, that's Spider-Man. Spider-Man's got to be able to stick to all those walls. So
yeah, it should be unique for his fighting style.
Another thing that I thought was unique was the coffee house after the car goes through and the thuds of Doc Ock walking up. The camera... It's kind of like Jurassic Park, right? You get this little boom sound,
that too.
Right? But what they do with this is they make the camera kind of shake and zoom in a little. Every single time there was a boom.
Yeah,
boom,
great.
The camera zooms forward. Boom, the camera zooms forward. And it was kind of a way of putting in a little bit more and extending that, what we know from Jurassic Park, and just making this a little bit more, okay, here's the next step. Like we're zooming in. It's getting closer. So I thought that was a great way to kind of add to something that you're not just pulling from another movie, you're pulling from it, but you're adding to it and making it unique to your movie. So
yeah, it's also very Evil Dead, and I'm so glad you had that too. I had that too, and like that was a really interesting way to do that because you just hear it and then it just snap zoom. Anything else before we move to sound?
Yes. Okay. Hold on now, Craig.
Oh, wow. Good. Go for it.
This one is my last one, and this is the one that, because you make me think this way. After MJ leaves Jonas Amoson's son at the altar and is running away in her wedding dress, did you notice the camera was sideways, angled?
Like a Dutch angle?
Well, I don't know. It's tilted probably at about a 30-degree or 40-degree angle.
It's getting close to Dutch,
she's running and smiling. So we see her running, but then we get a close-up of her probably from like her torso up, right?
Yeah.
And she's smiling, she's happy, she's running towards Peter. But as she's running, the camera goes to vertical. Like it goes and lines up to normal. And in my head, I kind of thought, oh, this is it. Everything is off. Nothing is right, because she didn't want to marry this guy, and we knew it, especially from the extended scene. And now it's right. It's righted back up because she's decided it's Peter. That's who she wants. And so in her running away from the wedding and running towards Peter, life was tilted at an angle, and it just wasn't right. And now it's straight and vertical again, and it's how it should be. So in my mind, that's kind of why without saying anything, you get a message of what the director's trying to tell you and a little more to the story. So I don't know.
Dang,
what
Corey,
I took from it.
Dude, you're getting good at this.
Craig,
that was solid analysis right
there. That was solid analysis. You go watch that scene and you tell me if you think the same thing, because that angle is tilted. And
I will look for that.
She's running, and it's like, what other point? At no point in this movie do you have this tilted camera like that at a diagonal. But except the moment when she's choosing Peter, whoop, it straightens back up.
Yeah, that's interesting. All right, cool. Well, let's move on to sound. I mentioned earlier the thing about Spider-Man losing his powers and clues for that. And in hindsight, the thing that's the first thing for me, because I was trying to track it, is we used the same Spidey sense sound that we did from the original film. That there's like 4 instances where it either is used or should be used. And I thought this was interesting. So we have it, yes, when Doc Ock throws the car. Mm-hmm. And he grabs Mary Jane and there's that slow-mo as it goes over them. And when he realizes the train is going to crash, he hears that too. But he does not hear it when he's riding his little scooter and almost gets run over. And he does not hear it right before Doc Ock's machine goes haywire, which both of those instances you would think he would. And so my theory is that he's already kind of losing touch with his powers at that point. And that's because otherwise it's whoops, we forgot to put the sound in.
Yeah, I could see that. The part that made me think with MJ was anytime MJ's involved, it's back to normal. He's heightened up.
Yeah,
and so that's where, like he was already losing touch with. I'm not having as much passion for it. Except the moment with like the cars coming, like MJ's in danger, I'm 100%. My Peter Tingle goes to 110%. Right?
Yeah, he's recommitted to the Peter Tingle.
He's recommitted to the Peter Tingle, and so, and I like the way they do this Peter Tingle in this one so much better.
Me too.
This is how I picture Spidey sense. Even more so going back to when he fights Flash in the first one, right?
Yeah.
Like that, the wings on the fly, and he's every angle zooming around. Like, he tells everything, and so I love that part, and so I think that's a great emphasis on that. Those spots.
I love that you brought up the loud thumping, that kind of ominous loud thumping when Doc Ock's approaching. It's twice. So you have the one where he throws the car at Peter, but it's also when he shows up at Harry's apartment too.
Yes.
Where it's a very similar thing. So I thought that was kind of cool that echoed literally and metaphorically. A couple of things that I really liked. I like the sound of the Doc Ock's mechanical arms. There's almost a hissing sound. They're very snake-like in this. It's mechanical, but it's also kind of organic and kind of serpentine.
It is very much.
Yeah. And one of the things, just random thing that I really liked was in that opening scene where I think it's maybe the first time he becomes Spider-Man, when he almost gets run over when the scooter or whatever, and then there's the cop car hits another car and flips in the air, and you're anticipating a crash, and then it lands in the web, and there's no sound. The lack of sound there just got me. I was like, oh, that's so cool.
Well, see, and I think they do that a lot in this movie. There's a lot of silence in this movie where they don't even have like this background music, and it's awkward. And like especially when he's talking to MJ in the backyard. Like you don't realize it until you see some movies where they don't put background music in there or some kind of a distraction. I think there's power in the silence of this movie. It kind of shows some awkwardness for Peter Parker, where things are just conversations. When he's talking to Harry at his birthday, there's a lot of parts of this movie where there's no sound other than them just talking, and it's almost like an awkward, eerie silence. So it creates a looming effect of just some of that awkwardness that he has.
Well, and of course, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, of course, we have Danny Elfman's back with his theme, which is used multiple times. I mean, there's not a whole lot of other orchestral stuff with that. And then come to find out, Elfman has a falling out with Sam Raimi during this. And so Christopher Young comes in, and he's actually the one who does Spider-Man 3. Elfman doesn't do Spider-Man 3 at all. So you have Christopher Young, Joseph LaDuca, and John Debney come in and do additional score for the film. So that might be some of it, too. That's why we don't have as much music in this.
Yeah.
But we also have a lot more pop music in this one, I think, than the last one, right? We got
the two songs are fantastic.
So which ones are you thinking of?
Jet, Hold On.
Yep.
And it's and it fits the movie perfectly, right, where it's timed in.
That's a great sequence, yeah.
And then the raindrops keep falling on my
yeah, that's the big one, right? It's like a music video and it pauses at the end or whatever.
Yes.
It's so cheesy, but I love it. Like, it knows it's cheesy.
Yes. Oh, yeah, that's what it's meant for.
He gets up like 3 times. Like, yeah. Of course, you have the diegetic use of the Spider-Man 67 cartoon theme. This time with like that Asian lady street performer.
Yes,
goes off key both times.
Yeah,
twice. So that's fun. And then if Justin was here, he would point out that this one has a soundtrack too. We don't get Nickelback this time, but we do have Dashboard Confessional, Vindicated, which Justin loves that song. And I was going to let him talk about it, but he's not here. So Justin, that's for you.
There you go.
But I really like my favorite song on the end credits is "Ordinary" by Train. I'd forgotten how much I like that song. That's a good song.
See, I didn't listen to the credits. I never do. If there's no end credits, Craig, I'm walking out. I'm sorry.
Well, you had that. So you have Vindicated. That's the first one. Then you have "Ordinary" by Train, and look that song up, Corey. It's really good. You'll be like, oh yeah, I remember that song. It's really good.
Yeah.
And then at the very end, you have the 67th theme again. This time. It's the Junkie XL remix. Junkie XL is a guy who worked with Snyder a lot, so I always like that guy. And it's sung by Michael Bublé. So you got this kind of very hipster kind of thing happening there. But that's about all I had for sound. Do you have anything else for sound?
I do. I had 2 things. One, did you happen to notice when he was on the phone calling MJ to leave voicemail how noisy New York was? Like, it was very noisy in the background. And then in MJ's apartment, it goes silent. So every time it kept flashing back and forth between MJ listening to him talking, they had the New York noise. The coins,
that's a good catch.
The coins are very loud when he puts them into the payphone. I don't even know if people know what a payphone is anymore. I mean, I don't know if they still have them. But
that might date the movie just a tiny bit.
And then and I gotta say, this annoys the snot out of me, and it did in the first movie too, because he did it when Tobey Maguire talks on a phone. He's got his mouth up against the hey MJ, stay out of dark alleys. Like, it's terrible.
Yeah.
It's like, Toby, pull the phone away from your mouth a little bit so we can hear you, because he's just breathing into the phone and the microphone. It just is. It always bugs me, and in this movie at least. So
interesting.
He did it again in this one.
So I think you hit on something kind of interesting though. If you think of it, so you said it's loud where Peter's at and not where MJ's at.
Yes. It was very loud where Peter's at.
Is that then very much a commentary, an audio, just kind of a brief audio hint at their living situations? Like, he lives in a very rundown, noisy, not good place to live, and she's living in a much better place.
And his life is chaos. The chaos of a New York busy street.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like, everything for him is loud and noisy, and he can't hear. He's trying to talk. He's short on money. It's just nothing working. And where she's at, it's quiet. It's clear. She can hear everything perfectly. She hears him perfectly. And she's listening. But she doesn't know everything that's going on. So anyway, it was a very strong. You watch that part again, you'll see when he goes to put the coin in there, the coins are so loud. But the street behind him, you hear all the streets and the horns and everybody. Like, it's very loud. And that's not a mistake. That's not something they slipped in. That's got to be an intentional thing, like you're saying. So
watch out, guys. Corey brought his A game tonight. Good Lord.
Doggone it. Right. And then the last part I got to say for sound.
Yeah.
And they don't really do this too much. When he's fighting Doc Ock on the side of the building and he yanks him off and they're falling down to the street, and the sound gets very quiet. It's almost like a Peter tingle or something. It gets quiet and everything goes silent. And I guess maybe you could say Aunt May was in danger at this point, right? Because she's up there hanging on that thing. And he's so focused on what he's doing, like he tunes everything out maybe. Because it goes like the sound disappears, and it's almost a slow motion of sound as they're falling. And he's fighting Doc Ock, and that's when he does the headbutt that they edited out in the alternate cut. So it's kind of interesting. It's really interesting that you watch that part.
Cool. All right, let's move down to performance. I mentioned this the last time. I'm going to say this every time we watch these movies, the Spider-Man movies. I don't like Tobey Maguire. Yes, he's nerdy as Parker, and that's fine, but he is not nearly cool enough to be Spider-Man. And he doesn't change his voice, and he's not quippy, and it bugs me. Also, Kirsten Dunst is awful, but good at screaming. Those are my 2 notes. I'm going to say this every single time we do these movies.
Oh, yeah. At the end, I noticed her screaming, and it bugged me how many times she screams at the end.
She's good at screaming.
And then, like, he throws the building over top into the sun and then turns around, and this thing's rotating at him, and she screams again. It's like, okay, I got this. Relax.
Yeah,
okay?
I love that part. He's like, this is really heavy.
Yeah. But I agree with you. Tobey Maguire's voice is not emotional and not... he's one level, one dimensional in it. And all his... See, I played the video game of this when I was a kid. I had it for
that open
like
open
a
world
PSP.
one, right?
Yeah. And,
that was a good game.
I played a couple of these video games, and he was always the cut scenes and the conversations. Yeah. And when there's some points where in this movie he's talking, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's straight out of a cutscene studio for a video game. Like, just no emotion, just, okay, Toby, we need you to read these lines. Okay, MJ, stay out of dark alleys. Like, kind of, there's no, it's like, wait a minute. You should be a little bit more emotional in this part, but so it.
I mean, I'm not sure how he would change it, because like I was like, how maybe like Miles in Into the Spider-Verse, where he's trying to talk like he's an adult.
Yeah,
like, it doesn't really work there either. But that's played for laughs. So, yeah, Molina's great though. Alfred Molina is fantastic in this movie. And they've way overplayed the whole like sympathetic villain thing to this point, but this one makes a lot of sense, because like he is arrogant even from the beginning. He's arrogant, but like not evil. And so there is there's rational explanation with the whole AI thing and the inhibitor chip and whatnot. But I thought it was really interesting. He doesn't become Doc Ock till like 40 minutes in. You really get to know him first.
There's an origin on him.
Yeah.
Yes. Jonah Jameson knocks it out of the park.
Always.
This is where we get the legendary meme that's huge right now, and I probably send this out at least 2 or 3 times a month to someone.
Yep.
Whenever stuff's going on in text conversations, is where he's laughing his head off and then says, "You serious?" Like, just absolutely incredible.
Yep.
J.K. Simmons, like, he is just incredible in this. And I think he was great in the first one. People loved him. They put him more in here in this one, and then they even throw him in a lot more in the last one too, with the pills he has to take. And his secretary and him, the banter between them is just incredible.
Yeah. Do you have any? Because I mean, he's most of the lines I wrote down. Did you have a line or two that you wanted to share from this film? It doesn't have to be from J.K. Simmons, but obviously that's cool.
I do. I got one. I'm going to start with one. I'm going to start with at the bank. This is the first one that I had. And this, I think, is because this is quippy Spider-Man. And the Doc Ock throws this big bag of money, gold coins at him, and he catches it. Spider-Man catches it, throws it back, and says, "Here's your change." Like, it just is the delivery of it. Tobey Maguire in that moment.
That's the most Spider-Man he is. Yep.
It was the most Spider-Man comment to ever make. Here's your change. Like, it just is. That's what you expect to see, and that's what you need. So,
yeah.
What about you?
One thing that stuck out to me is because I've probably, at this point, I've probably seen No Way Home more than I've seen this.
Yeah.
Just because it's recent, or I've seen it more recently, is their first exchange between Otto and Peter, where he says, "Parker, now I remember you. You're Dr. Connor's student. He tells me you're brilliant. he also tells me you're lazy. And then Peter says, trying to do better. And then you're going to get that callback in No Way Home. And like, it's a great, because he really appreciates who Peter is, sees him as, like kindred spirits. They're both geniuses, but he's kind of gone through, he's figured out how to do that and how to not be lazy. It keeps going about the intelligence is not a privilege, it's a gift. And, it's just, again, going back to that, with great power comes great responsibility. With great intelligence also comes, great responsibility too. So I love the fact that it was like a lift. Like when they do No Way Home, they literally pull that right from there and
straight from there. And the way he delivers it is great. Like just trying to do better.
Yeah.
The great part about that interaction there, because I remember this specifically from the book, the novelization, was Alfred Molina. Doc Ock says because Harry comes in and introduces him. This is my friend Peter Parker, the one I told you about. You need to meet him. And Doc Ock. Alfred Molina is annoyed and says in the book, I am very busy. I do not have time for this. I don't have time to meet your people, these people you want to bring in, right? Because he's got this big project. And then you flash forward. It's what have we been talking about, Peter, for the last hour and a half? Like he all of a sudden he focuses in because he realizes this is someone on his level, intelligence-wise. So it was such a great little part to kind of show the power of Peter's mind with Doc Ock's mind at the same time. So
yeah,
I love that quote. Again, just with Jonah Jameson, I love the part where his secretary tells him, "Boss, your wife's on the line. She said she lost her checkbook," and he says, "Thanks for the good news." Like it's just stuff like that. I just love this movie. It finds a place to be funny when it needs to be funny. So
yeah. Well, I had a similar one. He says, guy named Otto Octavius winds up with 8 limbs. What are the odds?
What are the odds of that? Nobody saw that coming.
Yeah.
And then the other part, I got to say, just a no-name guy when Spider-Man goes and changes in the alley and comes out with the pizzas, and he's like, whoa, he stole that guy's pizza.
Yeah.
Like, I love that scene. I love that line. I love everything about it.
So the last one that I have is, I'm not going to read it because there's a whole long thing. The Aunt May speech. We need a hero. That whole thing. It says, we need this thing. It says also, inspired us to hold on a second longer. That whole speech. She knows he's Spider-Man, right?
Yeah.
Even in that moment, she knows.
I feel like she has to. Like I feel like they always played it up that she knew. But you never know. Because
it's a long speech. It's basically a monologue.
It is,
but it's really, really good. The last thing I have, and I just love the way they used it, and I have this also for body language and facial expression, so I'll just use it here too. So essentially the last line of the film, Mary Jane says, "Go get him, Tiger," which is great. I love the callback to that.
Yes.
But you see how that emotion changes. It's like she's smiling at first, and then the music changes.
The music changes.
The resignation on her. Yeah, it's melancholy. The resignation on her face that this is what I signed up for now. He's going to leave.
And I always felt like they kind of did that to say you're going to take where the story's going to go from there. Like it's kind of one of those up in the end, like Inception, is the thing spinning or is it not? Like kind of the audience is going to pick what they want the ending to look like. Like she'll be happy and it's going to be fine or not. So
yeah.
And it always bugged me because I always hate that. It always hated that him and MJ don't get together because I feel like he deserves it. Like it's so sappy and sad all the time. Like I need him to have some happiness out of it. And I feel like they did do that in No Way Home because he says, yeah, we're together and we make it work. Yeah. It's not always easy. But I love that because it's kind of like, okay, I know my Peter Parker got happiness through his 30 years.
I mean, they're still together at the beginning of the third movie.
Yeah.
So I don't know how long that's supposed to be. A couple years, I'm assuming 2-3 years.
Yeah.
Some other things I really liked. I think honestly, Rosemary Harris is fantastic in this movie. We'll get to her a little bit later. To the lady who plays Aunt May. The scene where was a couple things when she makes Peter take the money is just brutal. But the reaction when Peter starts to tell her about what happened with Uncle Ben and how he let the guy go. She doesn't say anything. Just her facial expression just turns to like horror and disgust, and then he reaches for her hand and she pulls her hand away and then gets up without talking.
Gosh, that always pains my...
it's so powerful.
Isn't that that's why I say this movie has some silence that hurts. Like that, anybody who's ever been so mad at someone where you just have nothing to say, it hurts.
Yeah. But then on the other hand, I mean, what else can we say about Tobey Maguire's face when he's trying to stop the train? I mean, good Lord, man. It is not a good look.
It is not.
It's not. Like his angry cry and that is just, oh man, I don't know what he did, but it's
you know what? I'm going to tell you
not
though,
an attractive face. I don't know what my face would be like if I'm trying to stop a train, but hopefully it looks better than that.
When he does stop it and they catch him, and I did it again, I tear up. I tear up at that scene, Craig, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. When they're passing him back through the train because he's unconscious after stopping it, like it makes me tear up because it's kind of like all the New Yorkers just finally like look at this hero and they all know he's a hero and they're all rallying around him and trying to stand up for him.
Yeah,
and,
you know what I love about that? I forget that they do that. Like you got to go through us, and then he's like, "Fine," and then shoves him out of the way. Yep. I think that's really a great choice for that too, though. Like it's cool that they stand up for him, but it's also like you're facing this guy, you don't have a chance anyway.
Yep.
So I like that they kind of pull the rug out from under us in that we feel like inspired, and then it's like it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So.
There's a couple famous people in that scene too, by the way.
Yeah.
Who stand in front, who stand up for him. Anyway, but little cameos.
Okay. Some things about the costume. You mentioned this a little bit before. It's a little bit brighter. They've changed a few things, which I looked for it this time. The colors are brighter. I mentioned that the lenses are a little bit smaller. They've redesigned some of the suit, so it's a little more fluid. The helmet is a little bit better of a fit. And then Doc Ock's, like a lot of that is, I mean, obviously when it's moving around, it's CGI, but there's also like some practical stuff. Some, it's like some puppeteers are doing that. So a lot of those closer shots, which I think is a big reason why this movie holds up as well as it does.
Well, and I think he named them all. He even had names for them, but like it shows that there was some practicality in what they were doing, that it wasn't just CGI. They couldn't just fake it all and just let computers do it. So, yeah, it holds up well, I think.
Yeah. So, locations, moving down to setting design, I love the fact that they filmed this in New York for a lot of it. The train sequence, though, is in Chicago, in a place called The Loop.
Yeah.
And one thing that I love, I love when you can tie stuff into characters or motivations and whatnot. His Otto's abandoned building on the water is off balance, just like he is.
Oh, I did not notice that.
Yeah.
Oh. So, at No Way Home, when he pulls that down, that's the point when he would have been pulled to No Way Home, right before he dies there.
When he's under the water there?
Yeah.
I'm assuming.
I wonder, because he says, "I will not die a monster." Anyway, it was really good. Fast forward
because he's not looking. Why would he wouldn't have fought Peter at that point? Because he had already decided that they were okay, and then I'll take care of it.
But in the movie, he is different than the other villains, right?
Yeah.
Like he doesn't die defiant, and so in the movie he's not defiant. He's actually the one who's helping Peter in No Way Home. So it's kind of intriguing. It just made me look and say maybe that's the point.
Yeah.
Goblin died defiant, and so he's the one who's the villain in the next one. But anyway,
yeah,
it's powerful. Makes you think.
Some other things you mentioned, Peter's apartment a little bit, like how trashy that is versus Octavius's really spacious lab with all the windows, which turned out to be kind of a bad idea.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
No, that's not good. I love the fact that when Peter's dragging his scooter that got ran over, he's walking by Mary Jane poster after Mary Jane poster after Mary Jane poster.
Yeah.
Just to rub it in his face.
Just right.
So good. Some great props. I love the fact that Peter has a police scanner that he's looking for stuff.
Yes.
He's looking for trouble.
I'm going to point out a prop that I was like, are you kidding me? When they're doing the bank robbery and the cops are shooting up at the building, I'm pretty sure they would not just shoot up at the building at a guy who's 250 yards up in the air, and I'm just going to fire my pistol straight up in the air. And then the second was all those cops had Berettas and silver Berettas at that point. And I was like, at no point have I ever seen a real police officer have a silver-plated Beretta. A silver – it's the gun from Lethal Weapon.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, we got to hit the prop department a little harder next time, got to get black guns, everybody.
That's a good catch. That's a good catch. Some other things, when you mentioned the payphone, actual newspapers, I had that too, just as like he works for a newspaper, which makes sense, but like in 2024, you're not going to see a lot of newspapers. Or Harry has, paper files and photographs of Spidey. That stood out to me now just because that's kind of dated.
You bring up a point, Craig. Like how do we play that character out in modern 2024? Because that newspaper is not going to be running like that with deadline, especially with Superman movie coming up and Daily Planet type thing.
Yeah,
I mean, do we really have newspapers like that?
We still do, but are people reading actual newsprint paper? I mean, some people still are. I mean, there's the websites and whatnot. So I mean, there's still news being reported.
It'd be on their phone, like ding, ding, ding. You gotta have alerts and stuff. But
I did have one question about the one more question about the Doc Ock's arms. Why do they have spikes? Why do they have spikes? What scientific purpose is that?
In case they need to stick something.
The whole thing was like he had to reach in there, I guess, to like move some of the stuff. It didn't really feel like they were necessary at all.
Yeah. Did you catch the eyes on them in the shading?
No, there's eyes on them.
They have eyes. They have. There's a part, especially when he's just wakes up from the first time where he lost his inhibitor chip.
Yeah.
And it's standing there talking to him, and he's like, I hear a voice, and it's moving its little mouth. Right on the edge of it here, there's like a square or a spot, and it's like a soot or something on there, and it's white with a black pupil, and it looks like an eye. So then it creates this, you look at it and you see an image of it, like, oh my gosh, this is, it's like it has its own life looking at him. So
nice.
You catch it.
Okay. Anything else on setting the design before we move on to characters?
No, I think it's good.
Okay. Did you know that Jake Gyllenhaal was actually fully cast to replace Tobey Maguire because he got hurt in between this movie and this first one, like doing Seabiscuit. Like he was hired.
Yeah.
Like that was a done deal. And then
he hurt his back.
Yeah. That's an inside joke when he falls. He's like, my back. I'm back. My back. Yeah.
By the way, I'm gonna kudos to that stunt guy who did that, because that guy hit that car and bounced off to the next car 110%. I guarantee you he earned his paycheck that day. And then Tobey Maguire gets up, but I did not know that he got injured.
Yeah, that was a big deal. I remember reading about that in between when this movie was in production. But ultimately he comes back and Gyllenhaal has to wait for, Far From Home before he shows up in a Spider-Man movie. Kirsten Dunst as Mary Jane, we talked about this before. Apparently they had been dating. She and Maguire had been dating, but broken up prior to filming, which might explain some of the lack of chemistry, which I'm sure Justin will be talking about.
They just don't hit it, don't they?
No, I don't. Yeah, no. James Franco was good. Again, a solid, I think, in this. Alfred Molina is great. Some other ones that were possibly considered for this. Ed Harris, I think, would have been good. Chris Cooper, who shows up in The Amazing Spider-Man 2 as Osborn. And then Christopher Walken. I mean, I'm always in for Christopher Walken, but I think Molina's perfect for this.
Yeah, Molina's been perfect.
We get Dylan Baker playing Doc Connors, the pre-Lizard Doc Connors, I'm assuming.
Yes. I think the guy in Amazing Spider-Man does a better job as Doc Connors, is more believable, but it's more...
Reese
he's really good,
I think.
Yeah.
Bruce Campbell is back.
Bruce Campbell.
The Usher is so good. Oh my gosh. And
I will say, the extended version of him would have been better. We would have got more because he was just a lot more.
Well, I was going to mention this earlier. The angles in that are so extreme because he's standing up so much higher. It's like he has all the power in so many ways.
Yeah.
It's like turns to the side, like it's this side. No, you're not allowed. It helps to maintain the illusion.
Yes.
Lots of tiny parts for people who are big actors now. We mentioned Hal Sparks. Joel McHale is in there as a bank teller. Daniel Day Kim is not playing the same character that he was in Hulk too, but he plays a guy named Raymond who's an assistant for Otto. The big one for me that I always was like, oh my gosh, I forgot she was in this. Emily Deschanel, Bones, is the receptionist who won't pay for the pizzas.
Oh, I saw her and I thought she looked familiar, and I did not know I was like, man,
he's got a little bit of a
but you look at
Brooklyn
it in
accent.
2004, they were very different.
It's pre-Bones. Let's see. Hero's Journey. This is the Empire Strikes Back.
Yes.
Of the Spider-Man trilogy. It breaks him down so that you can rebuild him.
Yeah.
And it's just a kick in the teeth. You got refusal of the call this time around, the burden of leadership, refusal, responsibility. I mean, absolutely believe, and I think it's kind of proven that the losing his powers is fully psychosomatic, right?
Yeah.
He does. Yeah, he chooses that on a subconscious level.
Yeah, it is. It is something different. So there's no death of a mentor or anything. I guess maybe like the loss of a mentor.
Yeah, I mean it's a longer journey. Like it's just he's not done. He's not fully formed yet.
Yeah.
You know, it was thrust upon him, and then he still has to recommit to that. But in a lot of ways, and I couldn't believe I hadn't thought of this before. Like it's also kind of Superman 2 in some ways. If you think about Superman giving up his powers and then be like, well, crap, now that doesn't work. You can't do that.
Yes.
And as clunky as a line as it is in Civil War, when he's like when bad things happen and they happen because of you. Like when that's when he's walking down the street and you see the police going after somebody and he's just like, there's nothing I can do. It's like, that's kind of your fault, dude.
Yeah. Well, and I think you get that with the fire where he rescues the one girl from the fireplace and then they say a couple people didn't make it out. So
he saves the one, but not the other.
That's your fault. You would have had them.
Yep.
So,
as far as world building, again, the biggest thing is how does this fit in the pre-MCU? I think we've already kind of established that Spider-Man 1 fits pretty well.
Yep. And
so this one would too. Although, like what Justin brought up the last time, like the Punisher and Daredevil kind of are off on their own little offshoot a little bit, where we're going kind of gritty and serious, and this fits a little bit better with the more fantastical stuff. And some of the fantastical stuff that's coming up, like with Fantastic Four and Ghost Rider and whatnot.
Yeah, I think this movie could be. This is kind of a cool movie because it makes you look and say, could another superhero exist in this world? Where would this other, where's this other? Who are the Avengers? They don't have the Avengers. So, but is there room for someone else in this world? For an Avengers type thing. But
and it's this is nothing that we don't get much anymore in superhero movies now. Everything is like a world-ending event.
Yep.
This is not. And this is a very personal battle between Peter and Doc Ock. Like it is very centrally located. Like it's going to cause a lot of damage to New York. They said it's going to kill like half of New York.
Yeah.
But even still, like this is something he would handle on his own.
Yeah, it's not a world. That's a good point. It's not a world ending. And this is also a solo villain type movie. Like it's, nowadays you're getting multiple villains or some kind of connection to another world, which you can't have. So,
yeah. So, on that note, final thoughts, Corey, on Spider-Man 2.
My final thoughts. I think Spider-Man 2 is amazing Spider-Man film. I think it's an amazing superhero film. I think this came out before the Dark Knight trilogy, so you have to look at it as kind of its own, just barely before that. It's a movie with a flawed hero who I think he's got problems like everybody else. Money's tight, life's tight. This world that he's been called to be a hero is making it to where he can't make ends meet. He doesn't have the girl that he loves. His aunt's getting evicted, and his only friend hates the very character that he is, that he's choosing to be. And so I think it's one of those things where you end up just having this existential crisis. You just have this pity for the guy, and it's kind of delves deeper into who he is as a person, that he has to rise not above the superhero call, but he has to rise above himself and what he wants and what he's going to be. So I love this movie. I think it's great. I think it shows a kind of a human aspect more and dives into that, which I think is kind of nice when you bring the humanity with it. So there you go.
Nice. Yeah, great friggin' film. The one thing we didn't talk about, and I know where else to talk about, I'll talk about it now, that the end of this movie brilliantly sets up the third one. And I remember in the theater just being blown away that they kept going. It would totally be a post-credit scene now, but it's not. It's the scene before the Mary Jane Go Get 'Em Tiger thing, where you have Harry having a conversation with his dead father in the mirror and then discovering all of the goblin stuff. And like, is Harry nuts? Like,
yes,
I think he's already, he's off his rocker a little bit. He goes in there. You've got, this is another place you got Dutch angles. It might be the only other place. You get William Dafoe comes back. Like, that's insane. Like, that we had not seen that either. It's like, Nicholson in Batman, he's dead, he doesn't come back. Like, that was the trend. The villains in there, they die, they don't come back. It's a one-off most of the time, right? So just to have him back for 5 minutes, maybe, to do that and to just choose scenery and just act the crap out of the place and scream, "Avenge me," and all that stuff. Amazing.
Yeah.
That you've set up the next movie. Love it so much.
Well, and then to bring these two guys back into No Way Home 30 years later, or 20 years later, it's great because these characters are loved and epic, and these actors appreciated these characters. So just a couple of those small little housekeeping things in there. There is a very quick, like, blink it and you'll miss it. I thought there wasn't even Stanley is in this just briefly during the vertical fight with Doc Ock. There's some falling debris and he grabs the lady and says, like, watch out or whatever. That's it. I was like, was he even in this? Yeah, he's in it really, really quickly. That's his camera.
And then this movie won Best Visual Effects at the Oscars that year, beating out Harry Potter 3 and I, Robot. And was nominated for Best Sound Mixing, lost to Ray. Okay. And Best Sound Editing, which lost to The Incredibles, that's fair. Yeah. That's a pretty amazing movie sound-wise. And as we did say earlier, there is another version. Like, we're always looking for the director's cuts, right? Spider-Man 2.1, and I don't know how. I didn't see Sam Raimi on the documentary about that, which was kind of interesting. So I don't know how much of it is a director's cut or if that's a producer cut. I did see Avi Arad on that quite a bit, talking about, much like he did with the Daredevil director's cut, that we have this new thing called DVD now. I mean, it's 20 years old, and that you get this opportunity to, like, show alternate things. And this was like, Peter Jackson was doing this about that same time too. Like, the extended editions of Lord of the Rings and. So it was kind of a big deal. Like, DVD comes out, how are we going to market this stuff? And, with double dipping on the early bare bones release, and then here's the special edition that's got all this extra stuff. So it's worth checking out. I still think, again, longer, but not better. The theatrical.
No, it's not noticeable. I think it's not noticeable. So, other than a couple things.
Yeah. So, but this film, great film. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Looking forward to the next one.
Yes.
So as we close, we just want to say thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to connect with us, you can find us on X, Instagram, and Facebook. Email us at readingbetweenreels@gmail.com or use the SpeakPipe app on our website. If you enjoyed the show, please like, follow, or subscribe and review us on iTunes or Spotify. Our next episode will be a review of Blade Trinity. Send us an email or voicemail about your favorite moments from Blade Trinity. We'll share it on the next episode.